Okay, I need to talk about kind of what just happened today. Within the context of my experience as a voter. So today, the Virginia Supreme Court overturned an amendment that the people of Virginia voted for to redistrict Virginia. So they had a whole election. The people of Virginia showed up. They voted. And their Supreme Court is now saying, yes, you voted for this redistricting, but no, we're not going to honor it. At the same time, the Supreme Court at the federal level gutted the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And now we have states in the Bible Belt that are actively redistricting in the middle of elections to favor the Republicans at the legislative chambers. So all of that is happening within legislation, within the Senate, the Senate, state House, with no vote from the people in that state. So the Republican Supreme Court of Virginia, if you vote, you don't get to redistrict. The will of the people doesn't count. Republicans in every other southern state. But if we do this at the legislative level, where the people do not get a vote, that's 100% okay. And according to our Supreme Court. I need people to hear what this is. It is a pattern I have seen for my entire adult life. My very first election I ever voted in, and I'm going to date myself, it was the 2000 election. And so the presidential race was between Al Gore and George W. Bush. That race came down to about 500 votes in one state, Florida. Florida's governor at the time was Jeb Bush, George W. Bush's brother. And there was this whole issue of hanging chads. Basically, people were doing paper ballots back then, and you had to punch out holes, and they weren't sure whether or not to count votes where the hole had been punched partially out and wasn't completely out. And they were having to do a recount because of this. The Republicans sued till it reached the federal Supreme Court to stop the recount. Keep in mind, this is about 500 votes, right? Less than like some people's high school graduating class, right? 500 out of the whole of the United States. Gore had won the popular vote. It was coming down to the Electoral College in the state that W's brother ran. And Republicans stopped the recount. And basically the Supreme Court cronies at the time voted to stop the recount. One state, 500 votes. 2020, the contested election between Biden and Trump. Thousands of votes in multiple states is how Trump lost. We have people in our government right now that won't admit that Trump lost 2020. When it's thousands of votes across multiple states versus 500 votes in one state run by a candidate's brother. This is what they do. My entire adult life, they do not care about the will of the people. This is about power, money, and control. And Citizens United basically allowed them to do something that I don't think they were fully doing prior. But Citizens United allowed the Republicans and the billionaire class to buy the entire Democratic Party too. So at this point, we have those in power who favor the billionaires outright and have basically my entire life. And then that group then buys anyone else that might disagree with them. And we have I can name 3-4 people at the federal level that aren't bought by those influences, that will stand up to that, at least vocally. If you are still supporting the Republican Party at this point, you're blind. You cannot see that they have always been the party of the billionaire, millionaire class. Always. At least in my lifetime, right? And I'm pretty old. I just sort of dated myself. They have been this party for quite some time. They do not care about you as an everyday person. They do not care about your family. They do not care about your children. This is why you see these themes of Epstein-like issues coming up time and again with members of that party. It's why you see Epstein-like issues happening with religious leaders. It's why you see Epstein-like issues happening with those that are in positions of power and wealth and control. Because that is what's happening. And if you are still voting for, supporting, saying anything in favor of that, you have to open your eyes. We wouldn't have had 9/11. I believe that with my heart. We wouldn't have had the Iraq War. We probably wouldn't have had COVID, at least not the way we had it, if it wasn't for this kind of thing happening again and again and again by a group of people that are hungry for power, hungry for money, and ready to squash down any voice of the people at any time. We've all got to get on the same page here. Any normal person, anybody who's not in that billionaire class, we need to get on the same page. If we're going to have any prayer of making a future that is worthwhile for our children and our grandchildren.